Let's talk about the power and freedom that comes from allowing ourselves to experience our full range of emotions. Hey, welcome to the Possibility in Feelings Felt. What's up, Rifki?
Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Wow. Okay, let's get into it. Well, I guess we can just start by talking about what it is like when feelings are not felt and what is the importance of feeling our feelings. So, what happens when we do not feel our feelings? What happens when feelings are not felt? What happens to our own bodies, our own nervous systems, our own family systems, our culture? On a micro level, feelings not felt can create lots of physical and emotional symptoms like depression. Depression is a suppression or repression of life force energy, of the full range of our emotions. Like anxiety. Anxiety is a feeling not felt fully that didn't move fully through our system and creates kind of like a rupturous feeling inside of our body. Like physical illness. So many people walk around with mystery illnesses or pains, and they don't quite know where it's coming from or why they feel that way. A pain in migraines, right?
Mm.
Pain in our hips, pain in our knees, pain in our bellies, digestive issues, as well as some other mental health diagnoses that lately people have been noticing are not quite the way that it seems. And I've seen so many individuals who've learned to feel the full range of their emotions, who've learned to heal their nervous system, who actually healed from many illnesses, whether physically or emotionally. So we're here to talk about the possibility in feelings felt and really what is possible in feeling our feelings fully. And in this day and age, there's a lot of talk about the nervous system. I want to heal my nervous system. I want to understand my nervous system. If you're listening to this, you've probably heard about the nervous system. And often people who learn about the nervous system think to themselves, okay, so how am I going to learn how to regulate my emotions? Often, people's idea of regulating their emotions is to do the same thing, which is suppress, repress, push down. But actually, a real healing of nervous system is bringing emotions up and out at a pace that the system could handle.
Mm.
So, nervous system regulation is not actually the way that it seems in pop culture. And if we're regulating our emotions to suppression, we're actually not doing nervous system healing. We're just doing nervous system suppressing disguised as healing, right?
Wow.
It's similar to anger management. In past times in therapeutic spaces, anger management meant manage your anger, suppress your anger, mitigate your anger, minimize your anger. When actually, we've learned that how do we manage our anger? By feeling our anger in spaces that we're not then throwing our anger onto others or onto or pushing it back deeper inside of ourselves. So today we're going to be speaking all about this topic.
Yeah. Wow. It almost feels to me like the expression of the feeling that we're suppressing is the medicine. If I could recognize that this depressive experience is actually the end result of something that's inside of me that's not being felt because of whatever shame or guilt or idea that I was taught, or the acceptance or allowance of the feeling to exist, that I then, I'm trying to find the word for it, but kind of like so beautifully presented outward so that it doesn't seem like it's here or bothering me, but which is what I'm really telling myself, it's just not allowed. And so I'm squishing it away. It makes me think of as within, so without. If without is an experience that I'm not appreciating or enjoying, like a depressive experience or feeling really anxious, that's the light inward to be curious about what is the feeling that I'm not allowing myself to experience. And in that curiosity, I could offer myself the light into what possibly just needs to be seen and felt and allowed through my body so that it's not trapped anymore inside of me. And because of that trappedness, I'm now feeling so anxious and out of sorts and dysregulated and just snapping at everybody.
Exactly, precisely. And we cannot regulate ourselves, and you see me doing quotations here if you're watching this video, out of a big feeling. We can only feel our way through it. And if we're going to feel a range of emotions, we're going to feel a range of emotions. If we're going to feel all the flavors of life, we're going to feel all the flavors of life. And some of those feelings are disappointed, and some of those feelings are fiery, and some of those feelings are big, and some of those feelings could be a little bit overwhelming for our system. But when we learn to expand our capacity, our nervous system's capacity to feel, then what happens is that we actually have so much more space in our bodies, in our psyche, in our spirit, in our nervous system to exist inside of this world. And sometimes when I see a client, I can tell if they have stuffed up emotions in so many ways, by their facial expression, by their
Mm.
posture, by the words that are stuck inside of their throat that I know they want to say, but it's not coming out, um, by the resentment that they hold, by the amount of frustration that they're holding, by the things that they do not say, by the lethargicness that they might have, the tiredness that they walk with,
Mm.
by the overwhelm that they express. So if you are listening to this and you fit into some of these categories, know that this podcast has some possibilities for you in feelings felt.
Yeah. Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
So, what would be the reason why I don't feel the feeling?
Yeah.
What would be the reason that I don't allow it to come through? I would assume that there's some kind of fear or something that's associated with that that's not allowing me to just, because what I'm understanding is if I feel a feeling, then it passes through me, then it's no longer trapped inside of me, then I'm no longer a victim of the feeling that's not felt because I actually just felt it. So what's holding me back from feeling the feeling?
Yeah. So it's a really good question. And I've actually thought about this and researched this quite a bit. And what I've learned is as follows. Many of our grandparents were survivors of whatever it was, whatever persecution they might have went through. My grandparents are Holocaust survivors. Many people who are listening to this in the Jewish community have the same. And in general, you know, pain, persecution, trauma, especially a few generations ago, 2 or 3 generations back,
And
even a generation ago.
probably everyone in America in some way, because we all are immigrants in some way or another. We were
Uh,
all escaping something that was limited for the hope of something that was going to be more prosperous and more magical than it was everybody's hope and dream in some way or another.
100%. And in the time of that trauma or suppression or persecution, there wasn't space or time to feel feelings simply because survival instinct needed to be there. So, for example, if someone felt grief in a concentration camp, that was not something that there was space for them to sit and cry and let it through their body. They had to grit. They had to survive. They had to use every single ounce of their survival tactics to live. Now, what happened to our DNA? Inside of our DNA, or in the study of epigenetics, where like our genes get passed down from generation to generation, some of us have understood this feelings thing like life or death. So
Mm.
that's why when your parent says, "Don't cry, I'm going to give you a lollipop," or "If you cry, I'm going to give you a reason to cry," or from that spectrum of reaction, it actually feels in their body like big feelings are fighting against survival. So, on the most basic level, teaching people that they could feel their feeling to the bottom of the feeling and not die is my
Mm.
deepest pleasure, because when you can experience that amount of pain and still be alive and still buoyant and still survive, then you can also feel that amount of pleasure and goodness and joy and aliveness inside of life. So there's some kind of suppression all around in a very survival instinct kind of way in our society.
Yeah. Which I think in that time it really served to be so
Deeply.
obedient, to be so enduring, did actually offer them their survival. It's a real, real thing, but it's to be able to now recognize that we're no longer in that kind of situation anymore, and we can expand our capacity so that the feelings could actually pass through us now.
100%. And I want to also presence with compassion those of you listening to this who might have went through trauma in this generation, in
Yeah.
this lifetime, that either you were not allowed to feel, perhaps you were hurt when you felt, perhaps your feelings were something that got in the way of your survival, whether emotionally or physically. And I just want to honor that if you're listening to this, you aren't there anymore, and also that you were there. So
Yeah.
just like the most compassion for that experience. And I'd love to share, Hani, the writing that I wrote last week. I wrote this quote that came to me, which is, when grief and self-compassion go together, forgiveness blooms. Whether it's forgiveness for ourselves or for others. Allowing is the most compassionate way we can be with ourselves. Allowing sorrow, allowing joy, allowing grief, allowing pleasure, allowing tears, and allowing healing.
Mm.
Allowing grief is a deep message of self compassion to the self. When we allow, we heal, and we bring in deep forgiveness into our lives and energy fields. Learning to allow is a process of unlearning the messages from society, culture, and trauma about what is natural and what is holy. Water teaches us about allowing. Let it flow. When you do, forgiveness and newness gets to bloom. Your grief is natural and holy. When nature calls and we listen, health gets restored in the system, and forgiveness and understanding arise naturally as we have allowed, felt, and sensed the feelings that we're asking to move through the system. Reframing grief. Grief is special, sacred, important, empowering, sweet, a portal to healing, natural, holy, and ever flowing, as long as we are alive. So many on their healing journey have a misconception that if they were truly healed, they wouldn't feel the river of grief or sadness. The amount of people that come to me and say, "Can you help me heal? And will I not feel sad anymore?"
Right.
That isn't true. When we heal, we actually have more space, compassion, and allowing of all the flavors of life. Letting go of that misconception is the ultimate freedom. Allow. It's what makes you free.
Yes.
Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got to have this very exact experience.
That's
Rifki
right.
Gross hosts a deep therapeutic intensive retreat, which is definitely not for beginners. It's for people that have been in the process of doing the work, have been really honest with themselves, have been really willing. It's a certain level of will, of being ready to step into even more and even more deeply. And the beautiful thing about the retreat, it's a very intimate retreat. It was 5 participants and myself and Rifki. And what is so beautiful about it is that each person receives their own personal facilitation. And in that facilitation, they receive a certain medicine, and their medicine gets poured into the next person. And something in the way that it flows, and I can't even fully describe it because it's the kind of experience that you just need to come and experience for yourself. But there's something so beautiful how one leads to the other and then leads to the other. And each one of us we heal in a collective because we're also hurt in a collective. We also, the pain is through others, with others, in the way that we interact with others and are triggered through others. And so when we heal in the space of being witness and being together with others, we offer each other so much. And I was the last one to have a facilitation, and the beautiful woman that went before me offered a word into the space that I never considered before. And the word that was coded into the space was acknowledgement. And so when Rifki approached me and was like, what is it that you want to address in your facilitation? I realized by presencing that word that I never acknowledged my own pain. Because what I did was, in my experience of being people pleasing and saving, I minimized my own pain and empowered the aspects of myself that were enduring and full of grit. And those parts of me that also come from the generations of what I've been through and the way that I was brought up and all of those things. And in some way, by minimizing it, I was holding this silent resentment towards others by blaming them to see for me what it is that I was not willing to see for myself. Holding them accountable. Don't you see how much pain you're putting me through? But like, how can you see how much pain you're putting me through if I myself am minimizing it to myself? And so the experience of what others are receiving from me is a much more minimized version because I didn't allow it to myself. And so we went into this really deep healing space where it was almost like an exorcism, where the allowing, that word allowing, was so fully like potent and available to me. And I let myself go there. I let myself go to all of the suppressed, squashed, abandoned, betrayed feelings inside of myself. They came up like you were describing before. They came up and they went through me. I felt the experience, and what it actually looked like in real life was a full-on tantrum.
Yeah.
In my entire experience of being a human in this world, I have never had a tantrum, not even as a child, because this aspect of myself that is so enduring didn't allow it to me. Even as a little kid, I held it together. Even as a little kid, I read the room and knew how I should show up so that it will be good for everybody else in the space. Where then I minimized my actual experience of what I was going through. And so this tantrum of my words, my body, the movement, the shaking, everything coming through me, when we came out of it, and there was a lot of beautiful moments where Rifki also offers this touch point inside of yourself. How do you know that you feel safe right now? How do you know that you're no longer feeling that feeling anymore, or that experience is no longer alive for you, so that you can create a new touch point within yourself of that deep knowing, the knowing inside of yourself, and recalibrate to your integrity, recalibrate to your inner alignment, which is what it felt like in that experience. And when we came through it, first of all, I was exhausted because it was allowing myself to feel so many feelings that I have never let myself feel because I've minimized it since I was a child. This pattern has been inside of me. So this has been a suppression on top of a suppression on top of a suppression that gets really tightly packed deep inside of myself, that stores itself in places inside of my body. That what's amazing about our minds is that we do such a good job of disguising it even to ourselves.
Yeah.
That I'm just easygoing. That's who I am. This identity of being easygoing, which in some ways just means I minimize my experience so it could be more palatable for you.
Yeah.
Is what I was really doing. It looks like easygoing, but actually in that easygoing space, there was silent resentment that I didn't even know in some ways. I didn't even have full access to because of the identities that I hold of what it looks like.
Yeah.
that then were able to be felt and pass through. And now in my life experience, now coming through that, having felt the things that were asking to be felt, I no longer hold anyone else accountable.
Yeah. How does it feel inside of you now? Can you share with our audience?
It feels there's a weightlessness.
Yeah.
There's like a weightlessness that comes in inside. And it's for things that I didn't even have full access to because of my beautiful and intelligent child wisdom that taught me how to navigate so that I can have my needs met in a way that wasn't triggering for others around me. So it's a really intelligent navigation that
Yeah.
even kept me outside of my own loop.
Yeah.
But in that word coming into the space, and obviously with the work, everything is steps that lead into the direction of being ready for
Yeah.
the next moment in your life. So obviously there's a lot of work that comes prior to this, but the word acknowledgement, when it came up in the person before me's facilitation, it dropped into my body in this way that I was like, that's I feel like that's the thing that's asking to be released from inside of me. And
Yeah.
then the release came, and afterwards, it's like I'm almost looking for something that no longer exists.
Yeah.
It's nowhere in my body. It's not there anymore. And the way I know that also is because the way I could be so honest in relationship now, because as honest as I was, there was a limitation if in some way I'm protecting myself, right? There's something that has to be negotiated inside of myself in order for it to be pleasing outside. And so whatever that looks like, even though it is the most honest that I had access to, and so there is honesty in it, but now it feels like this alignment that's so integral,
Yeah. Yeah.
so integral in the alignment space of I also don't hold you accountable to hold my pain anymore because I was able to give it to myself now. And
Yeah.
so once I don't need anything from you anymore, that that fear or that desire to be pleasing to, or that need for approval from, or that validation or whatever it is that you receive from other no longer exists. So once
Yeah.
that no longer exists, then I can just be honest with whatever it is and know that you can hold your own
Yes.
as I am holding my own now. Because now
Yeah.
I'm fully holding my own because I'm no longer blaming you for pain that I minimized. I
Yeah.
chose to minimize that. You didn't ask me to minimize it. I chose to, in the wisdom that my inner child understood, to be able to be safe and to be able to receive the things that I needed to receive. Whether it
Yeah.
was true or not, it doesn't matter. It's just where I was navigating from.
Yeah.
That was the reality. So, yeah, it's like the freedom and the breath that allows, and the level of connection that it's also offering me, which is my deepest desire, is to
Yeah.
be in connection with. But so long as I was minimizing the aspect of myself, I was actually not allowing myself to be in connection with my own self and my own pain. And so then I held that in between me and you, right? Because you should feel it. You should take responsibility. You take accountability for how you behave that made me feel. You can't make me feel. I made me feel.
Yeah.
And when I
You held it
gave,
between you and the other person. You
yes, between me and other person, which ultimately doesn't allow for the intimacy and connection that
Yeah.
I desire the most.
Yeah.
The most.
Yeah.
And so when I can give it to myself, which I did, which when there was a beautiful container and the container was holding the allowing, the
Yeah.
allowing that was necessary, because you said allowing is the portal to freedom. And
Yeah.
so that's literally what happened, allowing myself to acknowledge the pain that I so gravely minimized and letting it express itself in its full expression, in its full expression, which was just wild, just like the experience of allowing myself to lose it in that way,
Mm-hmm.
which was like shocking almost to me, but I was in it. I'm like, I'm just willing because I'm done with this. I'm done. I'm done with
Yeah.
holding it. There's this point of exhaustion that you're like, that's it. That's it. I'm
And
here. Can I allow it?
yeah. And your experience, which was so beautiful, was the experience of having a complete somatic dissolve, obviously in a contained way that you had worked towards. So you didn't just come and press a button and lose it. It was like
Yes.
you created enough nervous system capacity to feel that amount of feeling for a few years prior. But just want to frame that for our audience because that's not necessarily good for everybody. It was good
Yeah.
for you. It was the medicine for you. But I think what's so important is in that way. But what I think is so important about what you experienced is that even if our minds create all these defenses around if I'm good and if I'm okay and if I'm fine, our body keeps the score. Our body holds the information. So because the body is something that I am attuned to, I knew that you were holding the resentment inside of the experience in the subtle aspects of it, in the resonance field. So it's like bringing that up to consciousness through somatic work, through body work, through coding is really, really epic. And one of my teachers, Dr. Sam, always says people who hold frustration or resentments inside of their bodies, they do either one of two things. So the exhaust pipe on the car is on the back, right? It's behind you. The people who hold frustration and resentment, those of us who hold frustration and resentment, we do one of two things. We either blow the exhaust pipe over everyone in front of us, put our resentment all over them, or we stick it down our own throats and kind of fill ourselves with our own resentment. And the third way, which is the most embodied, alive, aligned way, is allowing the exhaust pipe to be behind us and sending our anger and our resentments and our pain and our grief behind us. That should not have happened to me as fuel to then move forward. It's blowing behind me so that I can then drive really fast. And I feel like that's the experience that I felt like you had. You came out with a weightlessness, with a like your car wasn't being like pulled back. It wasn't the stuckness on the inside, or you didn't have to feel like you needed to make other people give other people your resentment. It was like, now I can be exhilarated and weightless and drive at the full speed that my car actually has access to drive. And watching you in that process was also such a full somatic dissolve that when you end it, when you fully got out of it, you were able to have this experience where you were dancing with such deep abandon. You do live life to the fullest. And I've seen you dance with such deep abandon, but I've never seen you dance like that. That was dancing with a weightlessness that looked like the embodiment of freedom. And what you showed me in the mirror and what you showed everybody being the mirror was when feelings are felt to the fullest in a safe container. And when I can allow myself to acknowledge for myself what happens, the greatest power, the greatest freedom, the greatest self compassion, because feeling our feelings is an act of self compassion. And then the deepest forgiveness, not only first and foremost for ourselves, but also for others, because we can
Absolutely.
finally let go. And in
Yes.
order to let go in a way that's truthful and in alignment and in integrity, sometimes we need to feel it. It's like that quote, the only way out is through, or on my website, it says something like the way out is in, right? The portal to every next level of our growth and freedom and power is probably through the parts of us that we don't want to feel, because those are the parts of us that have been either suppressed or repressed by society, by our culture, in our genetic makeup, or even
Yeah.
by our own parents or in our childhood. So what you did, what in your specific facilitation, and everybody there on the retreat had a completely different process. What we do is
Yes.
retreat is that we have a combination of really incredible group work And each person has their own healing experience witnessed or sometimes contributed by the rest of the group. So we do things like somatic work and breath work and body work and hypnotherapy and energy work and family constellations and coding and all kinds of incredible healing modalities. But underneath the healing modalities, what everybody has is an experience where they can have a full, what I like to call somatic dissolve and resolve, and a very big deepening and expansion of their nervous system's capacity to feel the fullness and the range of life. Because in order to feel all the flavors of life, we need to feel all the flavors of life. Some of those flavors are tantrums, and some of those flavors are grief, and some of those flavors are incredible pleasure and joy and gratitude and happiness. And what Khani did, what I saw and what I reflected to you after that, the facilitation that you had, which was the deepest honor of my life to witness
Yeah.
you in, was I saw a woman, I saw my friend without defenses.
Yeah.
And I experienced you with no defense. It was like there was nothing between you and your godliness. There was nothing between you and your essence. There was full embodiment. And you are an embodied person, honey. You live in your body, you live in the present moment. But there was nothing in the way. And I experienced you the way I believe Hashem or God experiences us. There was zero defense. It was like I touched every place inside of myself. And now I'm just standing here in front of you all. And I am alive. And I am free. And I am feeling. And I am human. And I am whole. And it felt like integration. And it felt like we all, and you, obviously you did, had full access to your aliveness. And there's no better feeling than experiencing that within ourselves, because that is true healing. What is healing? In my experience of it, it isn't being calm all the time.
Yeah.
It's integrating and inviting all of our parts home to love, home to acceptance, home to our soul. And what you did was allow.
Yeah.
You gave yourself permission to allow those parts that might have been suppressed so that you can have a whole embodied system. And I
Yeah.
wish
And I
that,
and I
yeah,
appreciate so much the aspect of the forgiveness there, because when I allow myself to be human, when I let go of the defenses that feed a story that is an egoic
yeah,
ideal that's not real, I
yeah,
can't really forgive. I can't,
yeah,
because I'm
yeah,
still holding myself accountable by something that's out of reach of this realm. But when
yeah,
I can really allow myself to be the human that I am, in all the imperfections that come with that, in all the ways that I myself have minimized my own experience, and allow it to myself and forgive myself and recognize that I did the best I could when with the information that I had when I had it. And now I'm older and wiser, and now I'm ready for this. And now in the work that it takes to get to this moment, I invested in that so that this allowing could feel safe to lean into, that I could really allow it. Because what you were saying before about this fear of death, right? We're in this thing that, like, oh my God, if I'm going to feel it, am I going to survive feeling the feeling? Will I actually make it through that? And I don't know if that's conscious. I don't think that I'm going to die if I feel something, but there is this existential
yeah,
fear that's somewhere deep inside of myself, which is why I'm so afraid to feel it. But then the allowing to be human and to feel the feeling, and then the forgiveness that it allows for me and that it allows for other, which allows for the connection and the intimacy, which is the ultimate desire in my experience. What I love and desire the most in this world is to be in connection. And
yeah,
now also I recognize in my relationships now, and I recognize the desire for that connection, I am creating boundaries to honor the desire for the connection.
yeah,
So now I'm like, no, 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 I'm not going to minimize this and say, it's okay. When actually, when I say it's okay, it's not allowing me the connection that I really want. And now I'm speaking from the place inside of me that's like, I desire the connection and I desire the connection in this particular way. Can we try this? Can we
Yes.
try this? Because that's in alignment. Because that's what that's what my heart and soul really want in this. And
Yes.
so before I didn't have access to that because I kept minimizing it. And so there was no way. But now that I've
Yeah.
come through that space, now I'm in this place. So now I can create the infrastructure in this new reality, in this new frequency of existence to hone in what I desire most deeply, which is the connection and intimacy with all the people in my life ultimately.
Yes. And grief or feeling our feelings is the portal to connection. It's the portal to aliveness. It's the portal to peace. And it's a restorer of our life force. It's what allows our soul to fully and I can't even think of a better way to say that. It allows our soul to fully inhabit our body, the
Yes.
ultimate integrator. It's ultimate of if you're feeling unintegrated or there's parts of you that aren't allowed, there's something that wants to be felt. And when we feel it, when we don't feel it, what happens is that there's one of two things that happen. Either, I mean, many things, but one of two things in the way that I'm describing now, which is either we're consumed by our feelings to the point where we feel like we are a victim of our life and it feels very all consuming and all encompassing and our feelings are it's when I see someone who's consumed by their feeling, I know that they're not feeling their feeling. They think they're feeling their feeling. They're
Mm.
consumed by resentment. They can't stop crying, but there is something that isn't fully being allowed to be felt. It's not, sometimes people are afraid to feel their feelings because they're like, I'm just never going to stop crying. And that's how I know
Mm.
there's something there that isn't really being felt, or they lose access to their feeling, lose access to their self compassion, lose access to compassion in general. And that's how people could start becoming more like entitled or indulge in the world or feel less compassionate to life. Sometimes I get these emails in my inbox about people like asking for charity or things like that. And I once asked one of my groups for a poll. I was like, what happens when you get one of those emails? And a few
Mm.
people said, when I get that email, I cry. It consumes me. I think about it for all day. And some of other people in the group said, I don't even open them because something inside of it triggers an anger or an annoyance in me, or like, why are you asking? And they realized in that moment that that was the part of them that lost because the feeling is so big, actually. They lost the access to their compassion because having access to the compassion means feeling dysregulated or overwhelmed by emotion in this world. So, learning how to regulate our emotions, which means learning how to feel our feelings at the pace that our nervous system is available for it, is literally a restorer of compassion in the world. Because earlier in the podcast, I spoke about the micro effects of what not feeling our feelings are, but the macro effects is violence, war,
Yeah.
people pitting themselves against each other, loss of compassion, and God forbid, much worse things than that, right? Hurting others, very, very terrible things that happen when we lose access to our feeling, when we lose access to our grief, we lose access to our compassion, we lose, in certain sense, access to our humanity. And
Yeah.
then either we get consumed by it, where we can't help anyone if we're just like totally consumed, or we suppress it and push it away to the point that we don't even know that we're even feeling it.
Yeah, I resonate with the second way of disassociating almost from my
Yeah.
feelings because being with them just felt imbalanced and overwhelming and too much. And so I just lean into my endurance. But another thing that showed up a lot in my life, the way that it was so brilliantly defended, was this idea of entitlement.
Mm,
I leaned into this way of just like being entitled so that I didn't have to feel what I was compromising because I should just have the things that I need and want because I'm entitled to it, which is
mm,
a really brilliant way to disguise the parts of myself that were being minimized and not felt. Because look, I'm getting the things that I need, right? But I'm
Yeah.
getting it in this way that's really very defended and defending those parts that I minimized.
Something else that I want to share as well is that the deeper we go, the safer we feel. And I've been learning this more and more and more as I've been going deeper inside of my own process and my own journey, as well as with my clients and witnessing my friends and my clients, that it's actually, we're so afraid of going so deep into our psyches and into our somatic experience. But the deeper we go, the safer we feel. And the more we allow, the freer we get. And the more we feel, the less we project onto others. And the more we feel, the more relational we are. And the more we feel, the more connected we are. And it's just such a beautiful thing to learn that all these things that we thought might have been true and the reasons why we may have protected ourselves isn't necessarily necessary anymore. And what happens when we feel our feelings? We can return over and over again to the present moment where all of life lives. And we don't
Yes.
have to be ruminating in an experience of suffering, of what's going on in the past or what we don't have in the present, because we're allowing the feeling to pass through us. And it's okay to have a feeling. Sometimes when I work with parents, they tell me there's no reason why my child's feeling that way. And I ask them, have you ever considered that there might be a reason for your child to feel that way? And then I bring it a level deeper and I ask them, do you minimize your own feelings? Do you tell yourself there's no reason that you're feeling that way? Because maybe perhaps your parent minimized your feeling and told you there's no reason that you're feeling that way. And when we don't always need a reason to feel, but we can just allow the sensation and the feeling to move through us, what happens is that we free ourselves to be in the moment and to be alive, and we free others from our resentments and from the ways that we hold them accountable for our pain.
Yes, I definitely hear what you're saying about this generational minimizing experience that their parents minimized. And so my parents minimized. And so I've minimized. And it's making me think of a story that just happened the other day with my son, Itai. I was sitting on my bed and he came into my room and he's like, Mommy, I have to tell you something, but I think you're going to get really angry about it. And he was so choked up. And I was like, it's okay, Itai, because whatever it is, it already happened and I'll deal with it. I'll deal with it, whatever it is. He's like, you know that lamp that you love so much? I tripped on the wire and I smashed it. I'm so sorry. I feel so sorry about it. And I was like, thanks for telling me. Thanks for telling me. And what I decided to share was what I felt and not minimize my experience of it. And so I told him, I'm actually pretty sad about that because I really did like that lamp. And it wasn't to make him feel ashamed or upset about it, but it was about telling him that I hear what happened and I hear that you're so sorry and it wasn't intentional, but also in the same space, I also am sad because I really did love it. That was something that I really loved. And then he walked away and he came back and he was crying. And he's like, I don't really know what these tears are. I don't know what they
Mm,
are. I just have a lot of tears and I don't know what it
so
is. I
cute.
don't know. And I know that you're not upset with me. I know that, but I just have a lot of tears. And I was like, that's okay. That's okay. We could just let tears flow. We don't always have to know exactly where they're coming from. We can just let them
Yes.
be. We can just let them be because that's what's here right now and that's what has to come through. And I can be here to sit with you while we allow the tears to come through that we don't necessarily have full access to what they are or what exactly it is. And that
Yeah.
was it. We let the tears flow. The lamp was swept up and put in the trash. And so we move on with life. But
Yeah.
I think that in what my experience that was offered to me in the way that I was able to feel my full sense of experience my emotions that were no longer minimized, I was able to be honest with my son with what it was for me without guilt and shame, holding my own in that space, and then allowing whatever that was for him to just be. I don't know what it is either, baby. I don't know, but it's here. And so let's just be with it.
and let's let it pass until all the tears came through, until the last one dropped out of his little cute eyes. And then he was like, felt settled, and he walked out of the room. And that was that.
Wow. What an epic story. What an epic
Yeah.
story. And I learned so much from you always, but this story in specific is so exciting inside of my body. It's like, what a time to be alive. Like that these kinds of stories are happening inside of family systems where things are allowed without the mind needing to know everything that's going on, and where parents can not minimize their own emotions, which then allows more space for their children to have a full spectrum of emotions. And sometimes I have people come to me and they're like, help my child with their anxiety. And I always tell them, I always bring it back to them. What part of you feels like this anxiety needs to go away right now?
Hmm.
Right? What part
Yeah.
of you, what part of me, what part of us feels like this emotion needs to end? What part of us feels uncomfortable with the full range and the full spectrum of human emotions? And where can we live in a society where we allow more than we suppress? So a few years ago, I was in the bank and I went to the bank and I was depositing a check or something like that. And I saw a few people from my school where I went to high school. And I saw them living their lives. And I felt myself starting to tear up in the bank.
Hmm.
And I went into my car and I had a conversation with myself once I was done. And I said, Rifki, why are you crying? What's happening inside? And I realized that for anybody that knows me knows that I am absolutely obsessed with my life. I love my life. I love the way I live. I love so many aspects of the way I am and I be inside of this world. And there's a little child inside of me who thought that my life might look like the lives of those people in the bank. And I let those tears flow, not because my life is not the most incredible, miraculous, fun, amazing thing that ever happened to me, but because there's also a part of me that thought that something different would be.
Yes.
And I honored that part and I said, okay. And normally, if if in the past I would have been like, just be grateful for what you have. And I am. But that does not mean that a full range of emotions and different parts and children of different ages and expectations of others do not still live inside of my spirit and my psyche and my somatic experience and in my body. And it is okay to honor that feeling and let it flow through, because that doesn't mean that things are worse, and that doesn't mean that things are bad, and that doesn't minimize all the wonderful things that my life is. And there is a part in that moment through the tears that indicated to me that there was something that wanted to be felt. So, inviting our audience here and inviting all of us to feel the feelings that want to be felt, regardless of all the other feelings that are, so that everything gets to exist. Because if we want to live in a world where everyone and everything gets to exist, then it needs to start with ourselves and our own hearts.
Yeah. Yeah. What a beautiful offering. And to also remember and know that we're not going to die from that experience. We're not going to be in a space that will never be able to be consoled and that the crying will never end. The fear of that is what keeps us in the hold of the perpetuating patterns that are not allowing our full aliveness. But if we could lean in, and again, it's definitely recommended to do this in spaces that are safe and supported most of all, because emotions could be big and it does take a
Yeah.
lot out of us. And so to find the right therapist or the right group of friends or the people that can really hold you so that you could allow yourself to feel what it is, because I'll say for myself, standing on the other side of this, which is not the other side because life continues to evolve and we're going to continue to confront all kinds of things that show up, but to know that allowing myself to experience something very big actually makes me feel safer in this world and actually makes me feel more free and actually allows me to be in touch with my aliveness and navigate from that place inside of myself.
Yeah.
And so,
And I want to say one more thing as well that's coming through, and we'll I think end with this because our time is coming to an end.
yes.
Do you want to finish what you were saying first? And so you said, okay, which is panic attacks.
Mm,
Panic attacks in the study of the body and in what I've learned are emotions that are suppressed and repressed, but they're coming out and they're only being allowed to a certain extent. Now,
mm,
I was once in a group of people and there was somebody that was having a panic attack. And I know that if there was someone else there, they might have called an ambulance, right? Or they might have gave this person a medication or something like that. But it happens to be that panic attacks are something that I'm trained in and feel very confident to help people with. So I went over to her and I just put a hand on her. I asked her permission if it's okay. And I just motioned and worked with the energy that was inside of her to allow it to come up and out in a way that was integrated, in a way that wasn't too quick, in a way that might not have been too scary for the system. And the feeling came up, and she had this really, really, really big cry. And 3 minutes later, she was calm and happy like a lark.
mm.
And she's like, I've been having panic attacks for years, and I've never resolved it so quickly. And there were times where people called an ambulance, and there were times where I had to take a lot of medications and things like that. And I realized in that moment how far our society is as a whole in dealing with emotional repression and the repercussions on our physical and mental health, and holding the truth at the same time that holistic healing and deeper, more penetrative, more effective healing is a new wave, new old wave that's coming into our society again. And I really, really believe that feeling in an integrative way is a ticket to freedom and health. So
Yeah.
much more health for our society and systems on micro and macro levels. So blessing us all with a deep restoration of health for our minds and our bodies and our souls, so that we
Amen.
can finally rest into the people that we are here to be.
Amen. Gorgeous. Thank you.
Thanks, Khani. This was fun.
Yes.
And thank you to our listeners for listening.
Till
Okay, bye. Till next time.
next time.
The Possibility of the Universe podcast is only possible because of you, our audience. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Thanks so much for being here, and thanks so much for listening. I'm Connie. First and foremost, I am a believer. I am a wife. I am a mother of 6 beautiful children. I am the co-owner of Mimulo, luxury florist and event production company. I am a life coach working with both individuals and couples to empower them to step into their own possibilities in this universe.
Hi, I'm Rifki, and I love life. I love heart-centered living. I love to be curious, and I love to connect with all things. I started off as a social worker and developmental therapist, and now I work as a somatic and subconscious practitioner, using modalities such as somatic healing, breathwork, bodywork, hypnotherapy, and some really magical and incredible quantum healing technologies. I work with individuals, couples, run retreats and courses using these modalities to help people find the most freedom, presence, aliveness, and embodiment inside of their lives. The ways to contact us are through my website, rifkigross.com. That is spelled RIVKY dash, the straight line dash, gross, GROSS.com. You can also follow us on Instagram, Connie at Muckhome Sanctuary, and myself at Rifki Gross. We are here for any and all questions and feedback through the contact form on the website, and we're so looking forward to hearing from you.